Alrighty, we are going to go ahead and get started today because I have a lot of really great information to share with you, and I want to make sure that we have our full allotment of time to do so. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us for October's Accelerate series on success with stencils. If you're not familiar and you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. Here at Asset-Map, we actually are fortunate enough and are hosting what we call our Accelerate series, where we host a brand new topic every single month, every third Thursday at 3. Okay, so next month in November, we're going to be focusing on target map fundamentals, and that's going to take place on November 19th at 3 o'clock. So again, that is every third Thursday at 3. We are hosting an Accelerate series webinar on a brand new topic. Again, today's on success with stencils. All right, let's talk about a few housekeeping things before I introduce myself and my colleague. One of the biggest questions that we get consistently is this being recorded? Yes, it is, and you will receive that recording in an email follow-up. Following today's webinar, you actually are going to receive an email, I would say about an hour or so after. In that, it's going to have the recording along with some other really great information and links available to you for a lot of really great items that I'm going to touch on throughout today. So that being said, all lines are muted for recording quality, but your questions are very important to me. So please make sure that you're using the questions feature within GoToWebinar. All right, so if you look in your menu, you should see a questions area. Feel free to chat in anything that you like. And please know that we're very fortunate because my colleague Brad Janicki is on the line with us, and he is going to be monitoring that chat and answering any of those questions that come in. And of course, we'll save some time at the end to see if there are any that are applicable for the group, and we'll make sure to get those answered as well. All right, so let's go ahead and start. First, just want to start off by introducing myself. My name is LiaJean McHenry. I'm the Senior Training Manager over here at Asset-Map. Prior to my journey over at Asset-Map, I was actually working at eMoney Advisor for about the last 5 years. So as you can imagine, I've been in the fintech space, especially from a training perspective, for quite some time, but I'm really excited to take you through the material today. That being said, I always like to share a fun fact about myself. So fun fact about myself that I think that many people probably share along with me is I love to travel. Here's a couple places that I've had the privilege of visiting over the past several years: Thailand, Budapest, and Iceland, and that's the Blue Lagoon if anyone's familiar. Especially with the state of the world and where we are today, definitely been reminiscing a lot and feel very thankful for that experience in the time being. All right. Enough about me. Let's go ahead and talk about agenda. So again, today's topic is success with stencils. So of course, we're going to first start off by talking about what is a stencil. Then we're going to talk about where you find them, how to use them, and one really great feature is that you can even create custom stencils. So I'm going to walk you through an example of a custom stencil. We can even build one together. My hope is that you're going to leave today's webinar feeling much more confident in the stencils area. Whether you've used them or not, they are an incredible feature available to you within the Asset-Map platform. As we wrap up at the end today, of course, we're going to conclude with some support resources, Q&A, have a great couple fun announcements for you. So stay tuned and stick with me till the end if you can. There's going to be a lot of great information to go through. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with our first piece, which is, what is a stencil? So I want you to think about this. Even though every household out there, right, they have their own unique financial situations, there are typically general similarities between households. A few examples of these similarities may be age demographics, perhaps place of work, stage of work life, or family situation, just to name a few. Now, each of these examples can be defined by the financials found in these peer groups, which can be transcribed into stencils. So, a stencil is a template. It is a collection of tiles that helps define those examples I gave before, like age demographics, stage of work life, etc. Now, we already have some stencils already built into the application for you, and depending on your broker dealer, some of yours might be a little bit different, but you can create your own as well, and we're going to walk through those options today. The purpose of a stencil is to overlay placeholders onto your clients and prospects' asset maps to drive conversations. They allow you to showcase to your clients what their peer groups could potentially have, right? Similar to you, your peers typically have these, right? They help you fill in gaps. For example, if you get an incomplete discovery interview, right? Or that you see a client that you have added information for that they don't have certain financial instruments like insurance or retirement assets. Or it can even be used as a way to fact find for clients where they can actually overwrite the placeholders that you put there with their own financial information. So overall, again, the purpose of a stencil is to overlay placeholders onto your client and prospect's asset map to really drive those conversations of whether that be filling in gaps, if it's just gathering information, or really trying to assess if there's a need. So where I'll conclude with this before we hop into the app is this. Overall, applying a stencil to a household is really going to allow you to cut down on the time it takes for making asset maps and especially filling in any gaps that you may have. So let's go ahead and hop into the application and show you how it's done. And again, I see a lot of extra people have joined since the beginning. Again, this is being recorded. You will receive this recording in an email follow-up. And if you have any questions, please make sure that you use that questions feature in the GoToWebinar menu, and we'll make sure to get those answered. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hop into the Asset-Map platform. In terms of where do we find stencils, you actually first want to navigate into a household. So I'm going to go ahead and use my search feature bar up here at the top left, and I'm going to search for a household. I, of course, could click into my household index if I wanted to see the full list of my clients, but in this case, I already know who I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Spellmans. Now, the Spellmans were actually a prospect that I was working with, and one of the great features available to you in Asset-Map is our discovery interview process. As you know, that is an interactive way to add a household into the application, and you can actually share that link with a prospect and allow them the ability to fill out their information. From there, you can then create a household in Asset-Map. Now, I want to address something from the beginning. Sometimes with discovery interviews, right, when a client or a prospect is filling that out, sometimes they're not always going to have statements and things in front of them. And so they're going to say, well, I know I have some other stuff, I just can't think about it right now. So you may very well have an incomplete discovery interview. For example, these folks, the Spellmans, as you can see, I'm looking at their asset map. You know, I know that Dana, she's working, so she probably has a 401k. So this is Dana over here, right? All I see is that they entered in her salary. They didn't enter any kind of retirement assets they had. There's no insurance at the top here. So this is a perfect example of when, even if you add a household from scratch, you're adding in the basic information that you know. And you may look at this asset map and say, it looks a little bit bare. Or they fill out the discovery interview process and you open up their asset map and you say, this looks a little bit bare. You can utilize stencils to drive the conversation to help fill in those gaps or to look for new opportunities. If you're someone who specializes in selling insurance, or you perhaps focus a lot on retirement assets, you can use those particular stencils in order to drive those conversations towards those particular instruments. So where do we find a stencil? When you're in a household, over on the right, you're going to have your main toolbar. You'll notice here that towards the middle center is Apply Stencil. When we click on this, you're going to see over on the left that you're likely going to have some that are pre-built. Now, keep in mind, I've built out quite a few custom ones in here just for examples, so you're not going to see all of these in your list when you log in. And again, I want to reiterate this. Depending on your broker dealer, you may have specific pre-built templates in there that maybe look a little different than what I'm using today. Okay. When it comes to stencils in Asset-Map, we have some pre-built stencils, sometimes based off of age demographic, young families, millennials, things like that. We have a building blocks stencil. We also have a fact-finding stencil, etc. what I want to show you here is the building block stencil, which I believe that everyone has access to. So when we click on the building block stencil, okay, it'll say, do you want to apply the entire stencil to the whole household? You can, of course, select yes, but you'll notice here that when I click apply stencil, it's going to take a second. And what it's going to do is it's going to overlay placeholders onto the asset map for a variety of areas: retirement, insurance, etc. So you'll notice here that we have all these extra financial tiles that have been added as the placeholders. This is the stencil. You'll also know that a stencil has been applied when you see that every box is outlined in gray, and you'll notice that the dollar amount has $1 in it. For our pre-built stencils, we always add in a dollar amount because $1, there's psychology behind it. It's been proven that if you put 0, people tend to react better with seeing $1 because you're admitting that you know it's worth something, you just don't know the value of what it is, and you're needing to gather that information. Now, what I want to show you is that when you overlay a stencil, you may say, I don't want this. I actually didn't mean to pick this one. Now do I have to go in and click into every single one of these and delete it? Well, you could, right? We could just click into one of these financial instruments. We could just use our trash can icon and remove it. Okay, but that's going to take you a lot of time if you're going to go through all of these. So we created a shortcut for you over here on the right hand side, and we can click clear stencil. Okay, so if I click clear stencil, it would remove that entire stencil from view, and now it's just back to what we had before. So I want to show you again. If I select this option for applying a stencil, I go back to my building block stencil. You'll notice up here at the top where I showed you before, apply stencil to entire household. If you select the option for no, then you have the ability to select whom you want the stencil to be overlaid onto. So it always defaults to the primary client, but in this case, I could switch and I could say Dana, and I could come here and select what from the stencil of the building block stencil do I actually want to overlay. So this is where if you select conversation basics, it's going to put everything that's available in this stencil overlaid onto the asset map. But if you come into where we're looking at right now, you can actually be very intentional and select and say, you know what, I primarily want to know about her retirement plans because I know that she's working. She's got a great job. I know that that company offers a 401k plan. She probably just didn't have the statement available. So if I select retirement plans and I select Dana, I can select apply stencil. Again, it's going to take a moment for good reason, and it's going to overlay that retirement stencil for me here. Okay, so now when I meet with Dana and David, whether it's going to be an in-person meeting, rather nowadays it seems to be much more delivering that remote advice, right? So having that remote meeting. So I might be doing a screen sharing meeting with them, and I may want to just point out, you know, Dana, I noticed that you didn't have any retirement accounts listed, so I wanted to just show you that typically your peers around your age will likely have one, if not two, of these retirement accounts over on the right. Do you have any of these? And she may say, absolutely, I have a 401k, it's at Fidelity. Great. So what we can do is we can click into this stencil tile and we can fill that out. Who does this apply for? Okay, we'll go ahead and say asset type, we'll say retirement, it's for Dana. We can go ahead and call this her 401k. Right, naming criteria is really valuable because this is what appears on the tile on the asset map itself. And especially if you're going to be generating any kind of deliverables, including the asset map, it is important that we're intentional and making sure we're naming things appropriately. So we can go ahead and say Fidelity. Okay, she can give me a value. She may say, you know, I don't have my statement. I can look online. Oh, shoot, my password's expired. Last time I checked a couple months ago, it had $100,000 in it. I'll get you the statement as soon as I can for the most updated value. That's great. No problem. Thank you, Dana. So we can come in here and we can say value as of. Okay, we can do age or date. I'm going to select date. And in this case, I'm going to select my calendar and say as of today. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click Save Changes. Now, of course, if I wanted to, I could navigate to the other tabs in financial instruments. I could add in additional details if we're furthering that conversation about contributions and whatnot, or if there's any additional notes, you know, especially for Reg BI, so giving best interest advice. Maybe it's important for you to take notes that she's going to deliver a statement by the end of the week. So we can say updated statement provided by end of week. Okay, and then we can go ahead and click Save Changes. Now watch over here on the right. As soon as I saved that, I clicked into a tile that was a part of that retirement stencil. But because now I have entered information and I have clicked saved, it is now outlined in red, which means this is now going to be part of this asset map moving forward. So she says to me, nope, that's all I have. None of these other ones apply. I don't have any deferred compensation at this time. I can come over to the right and I can simply select Clear Stencil. And now all those other placeholders, they will be removed. However, I was either able to gather a piece of information from that stencil and I could apply that here. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful for you. So this is again where we could go back and click Apply Stencil again. We could select our, our building block stencil. I could say no, and maybe in this case, I actually want to address David and insurance, right? So I can come back into the building block stencil, and if, again, I select no, don't apply the whole thing because I want to maybe be specific about what I'm adding to their map as placeholders, I can come in here and I can say life insurance policies, let's put that, layer that on top of David. We'll go ahead and click Apply Stencil, and now it's going to be listed here. Okay, so hopefully that provides a little bit more insight as to if you have somebody who goes through the discovery interview process, which is incredibly valuable for you to share that link out with prospects. And if you have the right clients, you of course can share it with them too. Again, you only want to give that discovery interview link out to someone who is not a household currently in Asset-Map. Okay, because remember that once they go through that discovery interview process, we actually add them as a household into the application. But if you have an incomplete discovery interview, listen, any information is better than nothing. If they only give you 2 financials that they have, but you know that they have a very robust, financial picture, that's fine. Take what you can get, come back into the Asset-Map platform, go into their household, apply some stencils to the different types of assets that you think that they have, and set up a meeting. Have it be interactive. Remember, every single meeting is an Asset-Map meeting. There's always an opportunity, and I think we all know this, right? Every client meeting that we have, we typically find out something new, an updated value, an account we didn't know about, a goal we didn't know that they were looking to achieve. So remember, every single Asset-Map meeting, or excuse me, every single client meeting is an Asset-Map meeting. So let me go ahead and navigate to another client that I have pulled up here, and I prepped this so that you could see what it looks like. This would be a perfect example where maybe we already have a prospect. Let's say we met at a conference or they were referred to us by one of our other clients. I'm not interested in providing them the discovery interview link because maybe they're not the most technologically savvy people, or perhaps they're the kind of folks that really appreciate that white glove service. And I just know that for that particular client or prospect, I don't want to give them the discovery interview link. That's okay. You can always manually add a household into Asset-Map. And what you can do is if you don't know any information for them, this is where I was talking about sometimes advisors have found great success in using the different stencils available and the custom ones that they build to really use it as a fact finder, right? The ability to put some placeholders to drive conversation, and you can print it out, you can hand it to them across the table, they can mark it up, they can say, yeah, I have this type of account, and they can write the value. Or you can email it to them and they can, write back with the different types of accounts that they have. So what is that going to look like? Well, I have Sean and Ella McHenry, right? I can see that I knew that they have some kids, so I went ahead and added them in. I don't really know anything about in terms of their assets. Now, of course, over on the right, you can always add different financial instruments if you so choose, or you can, again, apply a stencil, right? And this typically will always save you time. So I could go ahead and click Apply Stencil. And this might be a great example where, they're a part of that baby boomer generation. So maybe I'm going to go ahead and select that stencil. Okay, and I'll go ahead and apply it to the whole household, and I can go ahead and click Apply Stencil. By doing this, right, I'm again going to overlay those placeholders for financial instruments similar to peers that fall into that, age demographic or, generation, if you so will. And sometimes it will take a second, right, because we are going to overlay a lot of different items. So what I would always recommend is if you're going to use stencils for as your pseudo fact finder, if you will, I would encourage you that if you're going to take one of your stencils and overlay it, try to be intentional and think about this prospect or client, anything that you know about them. If you know, right, that they are not going to have any kind of a mortgage, or if you know that they don't have any kind of frozen old 401k, or depending on your stencils, if there's anything about student loans or anything like that, just be intentional and make sure that you're removing it from the asset map prior to sharing it with them or prior to presenting it on screen in front of them. But I'll be honest, I know some advisors that have found success even when they're just on a call with a client and they're wanting to just do a fact-finding call, and maybe they're not even doing a share screen session, right? Sometimes stencils are really for you so that you don't forget to check in or ask about a particular financial instrument or area. So keep that in mind as well. So again, incredibly valuable for fact-finding, incredibly valuable for filling in gaps, but also it's a way for you to be strategic for perhaps a client that you know has specific needs as well. So let's move into our third case that we're going to look at today. So here I have my client, Garrison and Georgia Cole. And something that's interesting about them is you can see that they have a pretty well built out asset map already. They've been my client for some years. I already knew their information. I like to provide that white glove service. I went ahead and I filled out their whole asset map. Now, one thing that I do know about this particular client, and perhaps I work with a lot of other clients like this as well, but I know that they have a child with special needs, right? Well, I went ahead and I created a custom stencil for my households that have children or family members with special needs. Because I have found that working with clients with family members with special needs, they typically have some kind of a special needs trust. And they typically have some kind of ABLE account or some additional accounts tied to that particular individual. And even if they didn't, it's still going to behoove me to layer that onto my asset map for them because I want to know, do we have these accounts? Do we have these items in place? Because in order for me to provide the best advice, I have to touch onto these different areas. It's important. And if I'm aware of it, I would not be doing my job if I didn't bring it up. So let me show you what that would look like. So again, if I come back over to my main menu over on the right, I'll go ahead and click Apply Stencil. When I click on Apply Stencil, down on the right, or excuse me, on the left over here, I have my custom stencils that I've built out, and I'm going to go ahead and use my special needs families. Okay, and as soon as we're done doing this, I'm going to show you how to build a custom stencil, but I wanted to show you what this might look like. So in my custom stencil for special needs families, I'm going to go ahead and overlay this. Again, sometimes for me, I believe it's a best practice to always click no and just make sure that you're comfortable with who it's being applied to, so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and apply this to Mr. Client, in this case, which is Garrison Cole. So I'm going to go ahead and apply stencil. And all I've done in this particular stencil is I have applied a special needs trust, right? We have some placeholders here for insurance. Also, if there's any kind of ABLE account that they may have, okay? And in this case, Alexander is their child, okay? So just keep that in mind. And then we'll go ahead and come back over onto this page here, right? So what I've done is I've put a placeholder for insurance to fund the special needs trust, because if any of you are familiar with special needs planning, funding special needs, through insurance can be a very, I don't want to say it's not one of the easier ways per se, but it's a very lucrative way to fund a special needs trust if needed, right? And that they have any kind of ABLE accounts and things like that as well. So just know that you can create custom stencils. So now I want to navigate to show you how we can create a custom stencil. So how we would do that is we can actually just click this plus mark right on the top left of our application, which is Add New Household. okay? So we can go ahead and click Add New Household. You're going to notice up at the top here that it's going to say Household Details. If you want to create a custom stencil that you will be able to use and overlay into the variety of households that you have in Asset-Map, you need to select the option here for stencil. Now, what you can go ahead and do here is you will have to fill out some basic information, but you can be very vague when it comes to naming criteria. I know some people that prefer to just put X, or they can put sample. Remember, anything in red you do have to fill out, right? So you could do Mr. and Mrs., Mr. Mr., Mrs. Mrs. If you prefer to be more agnostic, you can even just put the letter X, or the number 1, whatever you prefer. And then you do have to fill something out here. So maybe we go ahead and select non-specified, and then we go ahead and add another member, right? If you typically in your book of business work with a client and spouse, then you're going to want to make sure that you're building your stencils appropriately. So what are some examples of stencils that you could build? Well, if you primarily work with insurance, right, you could build a stencil that has all the different insurance products that you typically would recommend. You can overlay that, and you can always say, oh, these folks have some of these, but they don't have the others, right? So we could leave the placeholders for the items they don't have. We could bring that up in a meeting. If you work with folks all within one type of occupation, for example, you primarily work with doctors or dentists, and you know that typically doctors and dentists have the following types of products and different kinds of financial instruments and things like that, you can build a stencil off of that, okay? If you work with folks that typically have children of some kind, you can even go ahead and add in a dependent if you so choose. For today's example, I'm just going to add these 3, but you can go ahead and build out whatever you like here. So if you want to add additional members, you have the ability to do so. When we go ahead and click Save Household here, oh, it's going to actually make you put in an age, so we can go ahead and just put the number 1. Okay. Okay, we can go ahead and click Save. It's going to take a second, and then it's going to go ahead and create our stencil. All right. You know that it's a stencil because when you open up a stencil to build it, right, we have to first create the shell of the custom stencil. Then we actually have to build what we want to be in this custom stencil. And then we can go into actual households that we have, and we can overlay it. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. Now, one of the benefits of creating a custom stencil is you can absolutely come over to our main menu and you can create it from scratch. So if you just want to add 3 different types of assets and you want to call that your general stencil or whatever the case may be, you can do that. Or if you want to use the different stencils that you have available to you and pick and choose from those to then create your custom stencil, you can do that as well. So let's show you how that's done. We're going to click Apply Stencil, and I could come, and I personally just really love the building block stencil. I just think it covers the variety of the different areas that you're likely going to be working with clients on. Of course, I always like to click No, and I'm going to actually be intentional and just I'll probably have to do this a couple times, but to select just the specific areas that I want. So maybe I want retirement plans, okay? It may actually behoove you that when you name your custom stencil, you may want to have it be, client, spouse, child as the naming criteria, because as you notice, I just put XXX, right? The first option is always going to be the primary. The second will always be the spouse, and any of the dependents and anyone else will fall underneath that, but just keep it in mind. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click Apply Stencil. So what this is going to do is it's going to put those placeholders for those retirement assets, right? And maybe in the stencil, I'm like, well, this is my retirement stencil, and I want this to be for both the client and spouse. So what I can do is I can go ahead and click Apply Stencil again. I can go back to my building block stencil. I can go ahead and click No. I can go ahead and select retirement plans. And this time, I'm going to go ahead and select the spouse. Okay, and we can go ahead and click Apply Stencil. Okay, and we go ahead and add that to here. Now, I showed you this example on purpose where I was very vague in the different naming criteria that I did, because I wanted to show you that even if you create a stencil and you realize that you don't like the way that you named it, or you don't like the items that are in it, you can always change that information. Okay. So if I go to the household Okay, if I go to the household summary page here, I can go ahead and click edit. And actually what we recommend is when you create a stencil, make sure that you're naming the household appropriately. So this is actually going to be my retirement stencil. Okay, make sure, and we recommend as a best practice that you include stencil as part of the name because it just makes it easier for you to be able to find it later on. Okay, so we can go ahead and switch that here and make sure that you're always clicking that save button. Okay, if I come back to my members and I say, you know what, I actually don't like that I just put the X's, that's okay. You can always come in here and we could just switch this to be primary. Okay, save changes. And then we could do the same thing. I'm not going to do it for the sake of time today, but we could switch that to be spouse and dependent. So the reason I'm showing this to you is because I want you to be intentional with naming criteria as you're going through. But remember, you can keep things agnostic. You can just call them primary, spouse, dependents, okay, as you're going through. All right, so let me go ahead and navigate back to one of my clients, so the Spellmans. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. Now I created my custom retirement stencil in order to overlay that onto a real household. So remember, I switched back to a real household that I have. Here are my clients. They are the Spellmans. I'm going to go ahead and click Apply Stencil. And in my list, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and you're going to see there's that custom stencil that you created. And I'm going to go ahead and click that stencil. In this case, I do want to apply it to the entire household because I want to overlay it on both the client and spouse. So I'm going to go ahead and click Apply Stencil, and it's going to go ahead and layer that on top of this particular client that I'm working with. Okay, for those different retirement assets. And now the next time I meet with them, I'm going to have an in-depth conversation because I've noticed a huge gap, right? Either they didn't share with me information and I'm missing it and I need it in order to do the best planning possible, or perhaps I found a gap. I've applied my advisor intelligence to say, you know what, I know you have some additional retirement accounts, or if you don't have these types of insurance, you know, for me, that's a concern. And we need to talk about that further. And then maybe that's when you transition into a target map to show them that they have a need for life insurance. Okay, show them how loss of funding or how lack of funding that they are in case something was to happen to one of them. Okay, now the cool thing about custom stencils is that you can actually share them with other advisors in your office that actually also have Asset-Map. So where do we find our stencils? If we actually navigate back to our household index, okay, that's always going to be our list of different households. You'll notice under status, anything that's listed as a stencil means that that is a custom stencil that you have created or has been shared with you. So I'm actually going to look for my retirement stencil, which I found. And what I can do is I can click into this retirement stencil. And under here where it says advisors, I can go ahead and click add advisor. And then it's going to take me to a page where I can go ahead and search for my colleague Brad, right? He works in my office. He also has Asset-Map. And instead of him having to reinvent the wheel, right? I've streamlined this. I've already created this great stencil. I just want him to be able to use it and apply it to the households that he has in the application. So I can go ahead and click on his name. And then of course, I'm going to go ahead and click save. So what I just did is I actually created him as a sub-advisor for this retirement stencil. Okay. A helpful note that I'll also mention is that stencils can be changing, right? If you start to find that you're using some custom stencils that you've built out, maybe because you work with doctors or you work with university professors or you work with primarily, you know, folks of a particular generation. If you start to notice that when you're overlaying a stencil, you're constantly deleting the same 5 things, if it's a custom stencil, you can always come in and update that at any time, right? You can always come back into the custom stencil and we can always remove those different items that we don't want. That way, when we overlay them to our households moving forward, we're cutting down the legwork for ourselves. So I just want to stress that. Okay. So I hope that was helpful for you to really provide some additional insight as to the different types of, well, rather, what stencils are, where you can find them, different ways that you can utilize them. And again, I just want to reiterate that these are really valuable for filling in gaps for any kind of fact finding that you're looking to do, and exceptional for when you're working with case-specific items with different types of households like special needs planning or estate planning and items like that as well. Now, while I have your attention, I actually want to ask you all a question. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put a poll on the screen right now. And I really want to know from all of you, how do you prefer to learn about Asset-Map? Okay, is it through awesome webinars like this one? Is it through, recorded training videos? Is it through support articles? Is it through speaking with support representatives directly, community forum? It's really important for us that as we're continuing to grow and really take training to the next level, we really want to make sure and hear from you what you prefer. All right. Thank you so much. I see a lot of you are voting. I'll go ahead and leave it up for a couple more seconds, so please fill that out. If perhaps you don't see something there, you can always chat it into the questions feature. My colleague Brad can always jot that down. But that's going to be really important for us to really hear from you all, to know what you are looking for in terms of additional training. Now, as I mentioned earlier today, after today's webinar, about an hour or so after, you're going to receive a follow-up email. In that email is going to be today's recording, along with a registration link for next month, November 19th, right? Remember, every third Thursday at 3. So that's going to be our Target Map Fundamentals Accelerate Series webinar. I've included the registration link in that email. Please go ahead and save your spot for that. Even if you can't attend, we'll always send you the recording. So just make sure that you're signing up for that as well. All right, let me go ahead and switch back to my PowerPoint here because I have a couple of exciting things that I want to share with you. So we'll go ahead and pull that up. All right, so what's next? One thing I want to mention is not next week, but the following week, we have a deeply informative training that we're doing. It is a 1 to 3 day training. It is our Asset Map Boot Camp. And I want to let you all know that I would love to see you all there. And just for joining today, I actually have a special promo code that you can utilize. It's, if you want to drop this down, and Brad, if you will add this into the questions area as well, it's just going to be LJ15BC. So it's my first name, initials, LiaJean, so LJ15, that's for 15% off, and then BC for bootcamp. I've included this promo code in the follow-up email that you're going to receive as well. But let me go ahead and show you quickly what you can expect from that bootcamp if you so choose to come. So in the follow-up email, I'm actually going to provide you a link, okay, to this registration website. So we have a couple different options. You can join us for just Bootcamp 101, right? We give you some focus points of what we'll be covering on that day, along with Bootcamp 201. Bootcamp 101 is a one-day training, right, from 12 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. And then Bootcamp 201 is actually over the course of 2 days. Okay, our next bootcamp is going to be October 28th through 30th. And if you're really looking for a deep immersion into really getting up and running with Asset-Map, or you've been using us for quite a while, but you're really just looking to hone in and refresh your skills, one of the most fortunate things that I can stress to you is that you're going to have the opportunity to hear from our founder and CEO, Adam Holt. He runs the 201 program along with speaks in the 101 program with me as well. I'll be there. I'd love to see you. And then, of course, one of our great colleagues, Sean Dodd, will be there as well to assist us with any questions that may come through. So make sure that you're checking that out. In addition, in the follow-up email that you're going to receive today, we would love it if you could leave us an honest review. If you are a big advocate of Asset-Map and you would like to recommend or leave us a review, we would really appreciate that. So just know that in the follow-up email, you're also going to receive that area as well. And let me go ahead and, apologies. Let me go ahead and close this out. That would help if you could see that. Okay. So let me just go ahead and make sure that you can see my screen. Yep. So as I mentioned, Bootcamp, we're going to provide that link for you if you'd like to register. All right. And again, you're going to have the opportunity to hear from myself, our founder and CEO, and Sean Dodds, our customer onboarding advisor. And again, on this website, it's going to list out your different options for Bootcamp 101, 201, or if you'd like to come to all 3 days, we have Bootcamp Combo. If you decide to register, this is where you can come, select the option that you're looking for, and then of course you can go ahead and apply that promo code. Again, that's going to be LJ15BC, and that's going to be included in the follow-up email as well. All right. Again, if you could leave us an honest review, we would love to hear from you. If you're a big advocate of Asset-Map, please feel free to fill that out. And lastly, I wanted to go ahead and ask you, did you know that technically you could get Asset-Map for free? And really what's going to determine that is just introduce us to your leadership team and we can go ahead and handle the rest. So in addition, in that follow-up email, I have a link in there. If you are interested in learning more as to how you can get Asset-Map for free, you can introduce us to your leadership. You can fill out a quick little form that the link will take you to. We'd love to hear from you and get to know a little bit more. Lastly, I know there's a lot of announcements. What I want to conclude with is there's a very exciting brand new innovation that came out just this week. We just launched our integration with WealthBox. So for those of you that are WealthBox users, it is live and available to you in the Asset-Map application in your integration section. Keep in mind that for those of you that, depending on your broker dealer, it may not be available to you just because you're required to use a specific CRM. So just keep that in mind. But we're very excited about our brand new integration with WealthBox. So definitely check that out and know that that is available to you. Now I'm going to go ahead and check in with you, Brad, to see if there are any additional questions. So if you could unmute yourself and share with me. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we had a couple come in, but they actually were not about stencils, but they have been handled, so we are good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Oh,
other than that, I will go ahead and just thank each and every one of you for joining today's webinar. I hope that you found it informative, and I hope to see you utilizing stencils in the application moving forward. In terms of additional support, where I'll just conclude for today's webinar, it's just if I hop back into the application, as always, remember that when you're in the Asset-Map application, we always have all the support available to you ready in app. So if you just click into the chat bubble, no matter where you are, you can go ahead and click on that. And we have all of our in-app support right here for you. You can send us a message, you can chat with our team, you can even look for different items that you're looking for. For example, if you're looking for resources on stencils, if you search stencils right here and click the search button, there's going to be a lot of really great resources available to you. And again, you'll have today's recording to look back over time. In addition, down here at the bottom, you can even submit questions. You know, if you're not looking to have a live chat with someone right in this moment, you just want to submit a question and have somebody get back to you when they can, that's always an option here as well. And then lastly, I'll just mention that if you prefer to look at our support center in a larger view, you can always click on our question mark up here at the top to visit our support center. All right, Brad, in closing, let me just check in with you. Did I miss anything? Are we good to go?
We are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of you who stayed on the line with me. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day. I hope that you got a lot out of this webinar and enjoy the rest of your week and have an even better weekend. Thanks again.